In May of 1976, Nippon Educational Television, the network that would later become TV Asahi the following year, aired a special that, up until recently, resided on the fringe of obscurity. Tatakae Bokura no Hiro Dai Shugo, or Fight Our Heroes Great Gathering. The 40-plus minute special was largely devised by the network as part of a series of fillers for a particular time slot as they switched programs. So you had specials laser-focused on things from the network like sports and so on, and this one ended up being a piece designed to promote several of NET's then airing tokusatsu hero shows. However, in the long run, Great Gathering became more than just your average compilation special, turning out to be something of a unique trinket that's absolutely worth unpacking. As mentioned, Great Gathering aired in 1976. By then, NET was broadcasting Akumizer 3, the Kage Star, Ganbare Robocon, and Go Ranger to name a few. The latter two would have been well into their lengthy tenures on air by this point, Robocon hitting its 78th episode and Go Ranger reaching its 51st episode by the time Great Gathering aired. But even with that, this big Henshin Hero showcase ended up happening at the twilight of the Henshin Boom and the second Kaiju Boom. Because by 1976, Kamen Rider had long since wrapped with Kamen Rider Stronger, Ultraman was long off the air after the conclusion of Ultraman Leo, though it would come back a few years later in 1979, and the Showa Godzilla series had since wrapped. The last hurrah for the Henshin Boom would happen the following year in 1977 by way of shows like Jaka Dengeki Tai, Kaiketsu Zubat, and Dai Tetsujin 1-7, all of which would start and wrap before the end of the year. Never mind that these fading heroes were being surrounded on all sides by new shiny anime shows, all on the cusp of the big anime boom that would go off in 1977, led by the success of Space Battleship Yamato in Japanese theaters. With that in mind, Great Gathering is kind of a greatest hits album of the Henshin Boom. In addition to the focus on the 1976 lineup of Akumizer, Kage Star, Robocon, and Go Ranger, the special also showcased key moments and clips from past NET shows like Giant Robo, Android Hikaider, and Inazuman. In fact, a insert song from Inazuman would end up becoming the main theme for the TV special. And on top of that, it was hosted by Robocon, voiced by Keiko Yamamoto of Tensai Bakabon and Sazai-san fame, and Keiichi Noda, the voice of not only Professor Guts in Ganbare Robocon, but also Tetsuya Tsurugi and the regular narrator for several years of toy commercials.
今ハリケーン遊びが大流行。コピーのチャレンジマシンを買うとハリケーンボールが必ずもらえるよ。ヘルメットかぶってみんな仲良くかっこよく。パンチ発射必殺グラビトン噂通りのすごいやつ。世紀の王者ジャンボマシンダー新グレートマジンガー。コピーより新発売。
So you basically get these two key characters of the Henshin Boom going on about some of the greatest heroes of the age for about 40 minutes. Combined with the fact that the special was produced by Toru Hirayama, the Stan Lee-esque mover and shaker for Toei's Henshin Boom output, and you end up with a TV special that is basically a time capsule for what most consider to be the golden age for Japanese kids programming. Really, to tie the special off, all Great Gathering was missing was either an appearance by Ultraman Taro or Leo, a cameo by Mazinger Z, and a bevy of Chogokins. The cherry on top of the whole event, though, the final, incredibly wholesome scene where a flock of kids get to meet Robocon, Akumizer 3, Aka Ranger from Go Ranger, and both Kage and Bellstar. It is one of the most heartwarming sights ever, and I can only imagine that any child watching would have instantly projected themselves into that scene. I mean, hell, I would have. Damn it, I just want a hug from Robocon. The time significance aside, Great Gathering also holds the unique honor of being one of the few surviving TV specials out there. Several key specials like Ultra Q no Yaji are thankfully still with us in half-decent condition and have received several home video outings. Otherwise, you have a bunch of obscurities which have survived only thanks to intrepid fans on YouTube encoding ancient VHS off-air recordings. Unfortunately, though, those recordings are often subject to whims and nonsensical copyright strikes. The holy grail among these compilations, as far as I'm concerned, is Revive Showa Hero Retsuden, which was aired on Shukyo Broadcasting in Nagoya, Japan. A late-night show that featured select episodes of classic Showa-era heroes, as well as surviving material from a couple of sealed tokusatsu shows like Majin Bonder and Thunder Mask. It sadly has been lost to the ages, surviving only by passing mention as well as a couple of images floating around on Google. However, Sailor Fight, the indie series that's featured at the end of every episode of Retsuden, exists in its entirety on YouTube by way of a revival that happened a few years ago. In some ways, Great Gathering feels like a precursor to Showa Hero Retsuden, in that it showed off crucial moments from each featured show. And whereas Retsuden really hasn't been lucky in terms of preservation, Great Gathering is only slightly luckier. Great Gathering was only ever released on VHS once, back in 1985, and that's it. Though, strangely, the opening and ending credits for this found their way into a theme song compilation in the 2000s. I'm still trying to figure that one out. But it wasn't until recently that a brave soul uploaded first the opening and ending for the special, and then later the whole thing in its entirety, which is pretty much the catalyst for this entire episode in the first place. But in the meantime, I'm happy that Great Gathering exists now as a fun way to get some exposure to some of the greats of the 1970s. Not to mention, it's something pretty cool and fun to have on in the background while you're working, or even as party ambience. If I'd found this as a kid, I'd have watched it enough times the tape would have worn out. But having found it now in my late 30s, it's, again, that greatest hits album you bring out whenever you want a reminder of a simpler, more bombastic time for Japanese superheroes. It really is a testament to our motto here at Vintage Henshin: keep encoding the tapes. Because if someone hadn't done just that, we would have lost a hell of a thing with this. Not to mention we would have had to pay scalper prices to ever see it again, and f*** that noise immediately. Oh, and one more thing. I've compiled a really fun Henshin Boom sampler tape playlist. It's a mixture of stuff that's subtitled and also raw, but nonetheless, I think you'll get a kick out of it. Check it out, and have yourself a good one, computer boys and girls.